All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a genuinely eerie historical puzzle, one that has baffled scholars, historians, and true crime fans for over 4 centuries. We are exploring the lost colony of Roanoke, which is essentially America's oldest unsolved mystery. To really grasp the gravity of this, imagine this scenario. You step off a small boat onto an island, fully expecting to hear the ringing of blacksmith hammers and the laughter of your newly born granddaughter, Virginia Dare, who, by the way, was the very first English child born on American soil. But instead, as you wade onto the shore, you are met with this suffocating, absolute silence. Well, that was the agonizing reality for English Governor John White late in the summer, August 1590. After a grueling transatlantic journey, he finally made it back to the Roanoke settlement, only to find all 115 men, women, and children completely gone, just vanished. It's a chilling contrast, isn't it? Instead of the thriving, bustling community White expected to find, he walked into a bloodless, abandoned scene. The fort's wooden palisades were still upright, the gates were unbroken, and the houses, they hadn't been destroyed, they had just been carefully taken down. There was absolutely no blood in the dirt. No scattered belongings, no freshly dug graves. It was just a blank canvas of a crime scene. So, how did this happen? Well, if we look closely, the whole setup was a complete recipe for disaster. To unravel this mystery, we really have to look back at the chaotic origins of this venture, because this disaster was actually years in the making. Let's rewind a bit. A previous colony attempt back in 1585 had already completely poisoned the well. The governor of that first colony, a guy named Ralph Lane, was incredibly paranoid. He actually ended up massacring a local mainland village and decapitating the Native American chief, Winganina. So when John White's new batch of settlers arrived in 1587, they were walking directly into a hostile war zone created by the people who came before them. And to make matters worse, and this is a huge worse, those 1587 settlers were actually supposed to go to the deeper, much safer waters of Chesapeake Bay. But the rogue Portuguese navigator Simón Fernandes basically ignored the entire plan and just dumped them at Roanoke. When supplies immediately ran low, the colonists begged Governor White to return to England for help. He did, but then a massive Anglo-Spanish war broke out and the Queen ordered all ships to stand port. So White was trapped in England for 3 long years while his family starved in America. Which brings us to the only clues left behind in the dirt. When White finally made it back through that naval blockade in 1590, the settlement was a ghost town. The missing colonists had left him barely a breadcrumb trail to follow. Literally, the only pieces of evidence were the letters CRO carved into a tree and the word CROATOAN carved onto a wooden palisade post. Now, before White left 3 years prior, they had set up a secret code. If the colonists were forced out by violence or distress, they were supposed to carve a cross. Since he didn't find a cross, White confidently assumed they had safely relocated to the nearby island of CROATOAN, where a friendly indigenous tribe lived. But because of what happened next, history was left with a massive blank canvas, leading to centuries of wild theories and speculation. See, White immediately prepared to sail south to CROATOAN to find them, but a snapped anchor cable on his ship meant it was just too dangerous to continue. He was forced to turn back to Europe, never knowing what actually happened to his family. And over the centuries, the explanations to fill that void have ranged from a tragic massacre by native tribes or Spanish spies to some truly creative leaps. I mean, in the 1930s, hoaxers created fake inscribed rocks called the Dare Stones. As the internet took hold, theories spiraled into alien tractor beams, and even, I'm not kidding, a localized zombie plague. But let's scratch the folklore for a second and look at the hard science, because the real answer is far more fascinating. Let's look at the actual evidence, the map and the dirt. Fast forward to modern archaeological breakthroughs between 2012 and 2025 that literally blew this cold case wide open. It actually starts with a simple piece of paper. Back in 2012, researchers at the British Museum were analyzing John White's incredibly accurate 16th century watercolor map, La Virginia Pars. Using specialized backlighting, they discovered a hidden symbol exactly 50 miles inland, drawn in invisible ink and concealed beneath a tiny paper patch. It was a 4-pointed fort symbol. And this perfectly matched a cryptic note in White's journals, where he mentioned the colony had planned to move 50 miles into the Maine. He likely patched it over just to hide their intended location from Spanish spies. This mapped location, They dubbed it Site X over in Bertie County. Absolutely electrified the archaeological world. Teams rushed to dig in the Carolina dirt. But you know what their most earth-shattering discovery was? It was actually something they couldn't find. It's a brilliant chronological fingerprint. See, the Jamestown settlers who arrived just a few decades later in 1607, they were notoriously fond of clay tobacco pipes. They left them everywhere. So finding a complete and absolute absence of these pipes at Site X proves that the unearthed fragments of English pottery and European copper found there belonged exclusively to the Elizabethan Roanoke survivors, not those later colonists. While that was happening inland, another team was scouring Hatteras Island, which, by the way, is the modern name for Croatoan Island. Recent 2024 and 2025 excavations there uncovered an extraordinary shared living space. They found Native American refuse pits sitting intimately mixed with high-status English tools, European copper, and even a rusted 16th century rapier hilt. This wasn't a battlefield. The dirt proves they didn't conquer, they cohabitated. So we're no longer just looking at a lost English colony, but rather the survival of an American family. With absolutely no rescue coming, disease, drought, and starvation forced these desperate colonists to fracture their group. Some went inland to that secret mapped fort at Site X, and others went to the coast to seek sanctuary with the Croatoan tribe. They abandoned their fort to assimilate with the indigenous tribes for pure survival. And the ultimate smoking gun for this? It came just recently through biology. The Lost Colony DNA Project has been peering into the genetic codes of modern populations. They successfully matched the Y-DNA genetic signature of a modern participant directly to the Tudor-era English lineage of Henry and William Brown. Those are two names explicitly listed on the original 1587 passenger manifest. It is an absolutely stunning bridge across 400 years of silence. These colonizers realized the empire had completely abandoned them. So they shed their imperial identities, left their empty fort behind, and wove themselves directly into the indigenous world. It leaves us with a pretty profound question. If America's first lost colonists weren't actually lost at all, but rather assimilated into the local tribes, how does that change everything you thought you knew about the dawn of America? Think on that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.